When Trump was elected president in 2016, EV sales only accounted for 1% of all vehicles sold. But today they are approaching 10%, only because Trump lost the re-election to Biden. The presidential chair is up for grabs again, and Tesla CEO Elon Musk has backed Trump to win. In today's video, we explore 6 impacts a Trump presidency could have on EVs and why Elon Musk is supporting him. Number 6. Reduced emissions regulation for cars. Trump, like many other Republicans, is anti-EV. When asked about EVs in a recent interview, he said, "The cars don't go far enough. They're very, very expensive. They're also heavy." He also assured Republicans that he will preserve President Biden's electric vehicle policies. But those are just words, right? Well, Trump also selected a running mate who's aggressive anti-EV, Vance. Vance is responsible for the Drive American Act, a bill to eliminate over $100 billion in EV subsidies and replace them with America First Vehicle Credit, a bill that favors American-produced gas-powered cars. While Trump and Vance can't directly stop the production and adoption of EVs, they can frustrate it, and one way is by reducing the emission regulation of cars. A classic. During his first term, Trump already reduced the annual increase in fuel economy and efficiency from an annual 5% to only 1.5%. This move rendered the regulation redundant and slowed the need for companies to cut down on emissions. When Biden became president, he reversed many of Trump's rollbacks and set stricter emission standards, and if Trump were to return to power, he could follow Biden's playbook and simply reverse the current president's rollbacks. Stricter emission standards often push automakers to make more EVs. By reducing these standards, the immediate pressure to switch to EVs diminishes, and an industry that was already experiencing a market slowdown would almost grind to a halt. A drop in the current standards would force more automakers to scale back investments in EV production and focus more on improving the fuel efficiency of ICE vehicles. GM and Mercedes are already one step ahead, as these automakers have already announced a drop in investment and production of EVs. Number 5. Strict material sourcing requirements. The second way the Trump administration will impact EV policies is by changing some of the criteria for qualifying for tax credits. Thanks to the Biden administration, EVs have seen a significant boom in sales and adoption. While they still only account for 10% of all vehicles sold in 2023, it's a significant jump from where they were near zero, and that's in big part due to tax credits. The IRA made it so that anyone who purchased a used EV could get as much as $4,000 in tax credits, and people who bought new ones could get as much as $7,500, assuming they met certain requirements. One of these requirements was that the vehicle was under a certain price, and a percentage of the material used in the production of the EV was from American manufacturers. These strings attached forced many automakers to start a delicate dance of sourcing just enough parts from cheap sources like China to make their vehicles profitable, and just enough parts from American manufacturers to make the same vehicles eligible for the IRA tax credit. Even then, many automakers recorded losses from individual EV sales and looked to scaling to improve profit margins. If Trump were to return to the presidential seat, he would only have to increase the percentage of materials that have to be sourced locally to make the tax credit unattainable. If fewer EVs were to qualify for these credits, the financial attractiveness of EVs compared to ICEs would diminish, and buying or even producing one would be ridiculous. Number 4. Halt in the development of charging infrastructure. If EVs are ever going to gain mass market appeal, there needs to be a lot more charging infrastructure than currently available. Another impact a Trump presidency would have on EV policy is to change the current policy on charging infrastructure. The current IRS guidance uses a broad definition of low-income and non-urban to ensure that nearly 2/3 of Americans have access to the tax credit for EV chargers. This incentivizes the build-out of charging infrastructure in underserved areas. If the Trump administration were to narrow the criteria for eligibility, many rural and low-income areas would lose access to these incentives, leading to reduced charger deployment in these areas. This would worsen the existing disparities in EV infrastructure, making it harder for residents of less affluent and rural areas to access EVs. There are currently around 168,000 charging stations in the US, and while that sounds like a daunting number, experts estimate that another 400,000 are required in the country. The longer it takes for these extra 400,000 to be built, the longer it takes for EVs to go mainstream, and Trump would probably drag it for as long as he can. Number 3. Freezing funds for EV projects. A fourth impact Trump's administration will have on EVs and EV policies is to stop all funding directed to new EV projects. Federal funding and loans play a critical role in fostering innovation within the automotive industry. A freeze on such funds would limit technological advancements and weaken the competitiveness of struggling American automakers in the global EV market. During Trump's first tenure, Department of Transportation officials delayed federal grants for certain transportation modes while favoring their states. The Department of Energy did not issue any advanced technology vehicle manufacturing loans throughout Trump's 4 years in office, and you can expect a similar reception if he was to come back into office. With the federal government currently managing billions of dollars in EV and clean energy investments, a change in the pace of the disbursement of these funds would certainly harm the advancement of EVs. Federal funds are also vital for developing domestic supply chains for critical minerals and battery production. A delay or failure to administer federal grants and loans for these projects would increase reliance on foreign suppliers, particularly from countries like China. This would make sure that almost no EVs are eligible for tax credits, as we mentioned minutes ago. Number 2, decline in EV investments and production. The second biggest impact a Trump presidency would have on EVs is that it'll cause a nationwide decrease in EV investments and production in the US. If you add up all the potential policy changes we've discussed, they lead to one thing: a shaken confidence of the private sector. Investing in decarbonization and the reproduction of EVs can be risky and expensive, but thanks to incentives from Biden's administration, they were doable. Trump is publicly anti-AV, and his policies would only force investors to shift towards ICEs. With reduced incentives, lower demand, bureaucratic delays, and increased production costs, automakers would be forced to abandon EVs or bear the consequences. Elon Musk, who has been very open about his relationship with Trump, has welcomed the challenges that electric automakers would face if Trump has to win. Despite being the CEO of the largest EV automaker in America, Musk supports Trump and even pledged over $100 million towards the Republican candidate's campaign. Musk recently posted on X saying, "Take away the subsidies, it'll only help Tesla. Also, remove subsidies from all industries." While many experts have argued that a Trump administration would indeed favor Tesla, it's hard to agree. Other analysts argue that Tesla alone has received 109 government awards amounting to $3 billion since 2007. Tesla has also made several price cuts of around $1,000 in response to declining sales and tax credit criteria, meaning that it has enjoyed the impacts of EV subsidies. These numbers show that a Trump administration would hurt Tesla, just like it would hurt every other American EV manufacturer. Number 1, record high drop in EV sales. The final and ultimate impact of a Trump administration on EVs would be a drop in EV sales in the US. It's no secret that EVs have faced a major decline in sales numbers across all manufacturers. Even the biggest names like Tesla have had it rough over the past few quarters. The reality is, most of the people that were interested in EVs have already purchased EVs. The period of the early adopters is past, and they're not buying more because even they know that EVs are currently a hassle. A recent study showed that most EV owners own an ICE car and only use their EVs to complement their private fleet. The average American can't afford a complimentary car, especially when it exceeds their annual salary, and they'd rather go for a more reliable ICE when looking for a replacement vehicle. The policy changes Biden made effectively made these very expensive EVs just within the reach of some Americans as the country focused on reducing emissions and climate change. The Trump administration is pro-oil, and its policies would drive the already high cost of EVs to astronomical levels. EVs will cost more to produce, buy, and maintain. In the end, they'll lose all market appeal as producers will shift focus and money into making ICEs more fuel efficient, leading to more demand for gas-powered cars. Do you think EVs will survive a Trump administration? Share your thoughts in the comments, and thanks for watching.